Hey, welcome to the Breakaway Podcast. We hope you enjoy the talks and stick around for more at the end.
Well, several years ago, if you wanted to play basketball at the University of South Carolina, you had to sign a covenant. And the most interesting thing or conspicuous thing about this covenant was that nowhere in it does it mention basketball or the playing of basketball. But all through it, it's just how you are going to treat other people on the team, that you will speak to them with respect, that you will treat them with courtesy, that you will honor their gear, that we will conduct ourselves in a way that's civil and encouraging. And you read that, and for a while you may go, man, this sounds really soft and touchy-feely for a basketball team. But then when you see their winning record, you go, they're doing something right. And they were. Their coach understood something that's true for every organization. And it's true of this, that every organization, as important as your vision is, it's equally important that you have good values. That you need a great cause, but then you need a great culture in your team as well. Because we've all seen teams that have a wonderful cause. We're going to earn the national championship. But if they have a bad culture, if they don't speak to each other with respect, if they're mean, you can have all the talent in the world, but you're not going to win, right? I remember for me in high school, I had a football team that had wonderful coaches, and we had a great goal, win football games. And we had sufficient levels of talent, and yet every game, just the wheels would come off, and it took maybe two plays for things to start to devolve. And I've mentioned in here before, just times for me, as I was a lineman at 120 pounds. That was part of the problem. Being there and we'd be down like 36-0 and leaning in the huddle and hearing the guy next to me go, I just want to go home. You're like, what? That is not the right attitude, right? And guys yelling at each other, mad at each other, guys laughing when we got scored on. You'd go, there's something really broken about this. And so I remember being shocked when I came to A&M as a freshman because I went to football games and I expected to watch them lose and all of us to be discouraged and sad and angry. And it was shocking for me. My freshman year, we went undefeated. And I remember whenever we would fail to not crush them on defense or just slightly not make enough yards to make everyone happy, no one got angry. They would clap and go, you can do it, boys. Believe in yourselves. It's fantastic. Go Aggies. Farmers fight. Let's yell for them. All right? And I was just like, this stadium is immensely positive. And it was confusing to me, but I realized, you know what I'm in the middle of? I'm in the middle of a very positive culture. And they have the same cause that my high school team had, but there's a different culture here. And that's what makes the difference. You're not going to hit your goal as any organization. And this is true for any organization, what I'm talking about, organizational dynamics. It doesn't matter what vision you have. If you don't have values that are worthwhile, you're not going to hit it. It doesn't matter what your cause is. If your culture and your community, the way you talk to each other, the way you treat each other, if that's broken, you won't hit it. And so if you want to get to a great goal, you've got to have a good group dynamic. And what I love about our text is we're talking about Christianity, Christ, the team that God Almighty has put together. And I got to tell you something, it has the best cause. It has the best goal. It has the grandest vision that all of humanity, God has come to rescue. God is doing a work where he's beating back the darkness, getting rid of sin, getting rid of sickness, getting rid of death. That Jesus came to die for us and rise and to call forth a community that is marching towards eternity, the day he will arrive and wipe away every tear. And when we come to know him, he radically changes us, puts us in a family, and we run together, beating back sin, rescuing those who are hurting, and marching into a glorious future where he will win and we will enjoy him for eternity. That's where we've been the last 2 weeks. That's a great cause. And now as he turns to this section, he says, and as we march towards that cause together, this is what we're supposed to be like. This is the kind of culture I want us to be. This is how I want us to move and talk to each other as we pursue this great goal. That's where we're going tonight. And we're really just going to look at two things. He said, as we do this together, as we gather our little crew and we run together, there is a constituency of us that we are going to honor. And there's a constituency of us that we're going to help. That's really it. He says, as we move together, there's a group of us that we all need to honor, and there's a group of us that we all need to help. And that's where we're going. So you look, the first thing he says is there's a group among us that we need to honor. And you see it in verses 12 and 13. He says, we ask you, brothers, to respect those who labor among you, are over you in the Lord, and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love because of their work. Now that word respect in Greek, it's actually the word to know. And so what he's saying there is, I want you to acknowledge them. That's really a better translation. And I hate to say that because I hate to rip on translations, but acknowledge would have been a better word. What he's saying is, there's a group of people that I want you to notice. I want you to see them. You're walking along and I want you to identify a certain clientele of people. And then he says, when you identify them, I want you to esteem them. I want you to honor them. I want you to hold them in high regard. That's what he's saying in these two verses. As we're moving together, there's going to be a certain clientele among us that I want you to identify and then honor. That's the idea. Now, the big question is, who are these people? And as he works through it, he says, they are those who labor among us, who care for us in the Lord and instruct us. That's the idea. And in that text, in Greek, there's one definite article that kind of controls those three verbs. And if you're like, I don't care, too many words, here's what that means. It means it's one group of people that does all these things. He says, among us, there are some people, and they do these three things. And they do all of them. And you go, what do they do? Who are these people? He tells us, number one, he says, they're the people who labor. They're the people who work hard among us. Now, that word labor can be used of physical, manual labor, but when Paul uses it, he often uses it of himself as he spreads the gospel. So he said in Colossians, he said, my goal is to teach every man and train every man in all wisdom that I may present every man complete in Christ. And he says, for this I toil, I struggle with all the power God will give me. And then in 1 Corinthians and in Romans, in the shout out sections at the end, he tells everyone in the churches to honor and respect those who work hard among you. And the idea is that they work in serving the church. So when he says it here, he goes, there's a group of people that are working hard to spread the gospel and serve the church. He says, and I want you to look for those people. Who are the people who are laboring to spread the gospel and to serve us? But they're not just laboring. The next one, it says they are over you in the Lord. That word, again, it's a word that has a range. And the word can mean preside over you, like rule. And the word can also mean take care of you, look after you. And so some people, when they read that word, some commentators say that word means like an official boss. It's like a title, like elder or pastor, but that's not true. It doesn't always mean rule. It can also mean take care of. Paul uses it a couple times to refer to people who don't rule him, but actually take care of him financially. And so it can mean kind of rule or lead. It's used 3 times in 1 Timothy of a dad, a father who manages his household. And that really carries both ideas. He kind of rules the house, but also takes care of it. But here in this text, it's not real clear what emphases he wants to say. Are these people who rule you like they're the boss and tell you what to do with authority? Or are they people who are looking out for you and funding you and helping you financially and taking care of you? Or is there some mix of both? It's probably both, that they're help managing and administrating, but it doesn't mean an official role like they've been hired as a boss. He doesn't use the word elder anywhere in this passage. These aren't official leaders here. And yet they're people who are managing, taking care of us, helping us. And then the last part says, and they admonish us. That word admonish means to teach, but it doesn't just mean teach like download data. It means teach with a view to changing your conduct. That these are people that talk to you about how to live your life and they make you better people. And so that's who he's saying to talk about. He's saying, what do we do? The first thing we need to do as a Christian community is we gather together, and these Thessalonians, they were brand new Christians. And Paul gathers them together and says, you belong to Christ. All the future is going to be his. You are marching towards him. They're like, all right. And he's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. What are we going to do, Paul? He says, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to honor. We're going to esteem highly and love the people among us that work hard and care for us and teach us. But what's interesting about this is, if you notice in the text, he doesn't say they're elders. He doesn't say they're the pastors of the church. And you go, why not? Here's why I don't think he is. He's saying that because remember, this is a brand new church, and Paul had to leave suddenly. And so he didn't get a chance to set up leadership. You see him do it in the pastorals. He sends Timothy or Titus to help set up elders, official positions who rule the church. But Thessalonica, do you remember they had to bolt really fast? And yet what's interesting in the pastorals, as he says, here's how to pick leaders. Do you know what he tells the church? He says, here's how you pick leaders. You watch and you see, and then he says these things. Look at your community and see who's working hard. Who's teaching you, who's taking care of you, and those are the people you make leaders. And so what I think is happening here is we're catching them on the front end. Paul is giving them the blueprint of how to be a leader in the Christian community. That's what he's doing in this first part. He's saying, hey, we don't have official titles for them yet, but I want you to start looking around, start seeing, because some people are going to rise up that are going to run this crew. And here's the kind of people I want you to look for, and that's the clientele. So who do we honor? I love it. If you just think about what he's doing here, he says, there's a group I want you to honor. Who? They're the people that are working hard, who care for you and teach you. That's who you honor. And here's what's interesting about that. He's saying, this is an organic leadership development school. He's saying these people are going to be your leaders. How do we know? How do Christians pick leaders? How do we decide who's going to rule us? And I got to tell you, we make those decisions all the time, especially at A&M. A&M is the most organizational, startingest school ever. When I came here as a student, I remember there was an organization that was called the Howdy Organization. It existed for no other reason than to preserve the greeting howdy. Someone started an organization for no other reason than to preserve a certain form of greeting. And they had applications and everything. And there's hundreds of Christian organizations and dozens of churches, and the reality is we're picking leaders all the time. But I want you to notice something. On what basis does the Christian pick a leader? How do we decide who leads us? Who do we honor? Who do we raise up? What is Paul telling us the criteria is? Do you know what it is? Proven service. Proven service. Who gets to lead? Who do we honor? The person who's already doing the work. Do you see that? He doesn't say a thing about talent. He doesn't say, well, pick the person who's just really funny or really charismatic or just super awesome. He doesn't say anything about spiritual giftings even. He says, pick the people that have proven service, that they're in there doing the work. And I got to tell you, that's important for us. There's two things I want us to see in this section. The first thing is this, is how do you pick Christian leaders? I got to tell you, it's not based on talent and charisma. But I meet people all the time that they're a little bit talented, they got some charisma. So out there in the world, they're made leaders of all kinds of organizations. They're funny, they're smart, they're whimsical. And so people say, hey, you lead us. And so then they come to the Christian church and they go, hey, I'm talented, funny, whimsical. Give me the ball, I'll lead. And the answer is no. No. Because our criteria is proven service. Because I tell you something, it happens all the time in denominations and organizations. What happens among churches? They'll find someone who's talented, someone with charisma, and they'll make them a leader. And a couple years later, what happens? They have an affair, they steal money, they are a train wreck. Because talent without character is a tragedy waiting to happen. It is. And so I got to tell you something. The way we raise up leaders in the Christian church is we wait till you have character. We put you at the bottom. We put you where there's no glory, no spotlight at all. Why? Because if the spotlight shines on you, if we give you the big stage right away, you'll be doing it for the glory. We put you somewhere where there's no glory, right? We put you leading junior high small groups, right? Where they're picking their nose and you're like, I'm trying to pay attention. All right, and somebody where there's no glory. And they're not going to go, wow, that was powerful. Thank you. All right, it's not going to happen. And why are we going to put you there? Because if you were just doing it for the glory, you'll go, this stinks, and you'll quit, and we didn't need you anyway. But we put you somewhere low. Why? Because you'll realize, I'm not getting any feedback. I'm not getting any glory from me. The only reason why you would keep serving is a fear of God and a genuine love for people. And that's what we need developed in you. That you get a deep fear of God and a deep love of people, and as God molds that character into you, then you become a person who can rise up and lead us. So I have guys come to me all the time. They come up to me and they say, how do I get to do what you do? And what they mean is one of two things. How do I get to speak in front of large crowds of people? Or how do I get to be the boss over my own organization? And both are the wrong question. Because I know what they're asking. Because this text says what? It says honor and esteem and love those who are leading you. And so I know what they see. They see guys who are leading organizations, who are guys who are speaking in front of big groups, and they see the honor, they see the esteem, they see the love, and they want a piece of that action. And so they say, how do I get there? And so what happens with a lot of them is the questions become something like, when you tell them pray, serve, they go, yeah. But how do I get there? And what they're asking is like good business school questions. How do I network? Like who do I need to move with? Who do I need to talk to? Who needs to know my name? How do I slip my card in? How do I call the secret line, all right, to really get in? And how do I fast track this baby so I can get to the top now? And the reality is, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. How do you get to be a leader in God's church, among God's people? You love people. You serve people. And I got to tell you something. I want you to hear this. You won't get the honor of people and you won't get the love of people until you take on the problems of people. That's who we look for. And that's what he says here. He goes, you know who we honor? You know who we love? The people who are taking care of us. The people who are laboring for us. The people who are helping us. Those are the people that we go ahead and put in leadership because they're already doing the work. They were doing it for no glory and no title. We stick them up there. But the people who are hungry for the glory and title, no. They want to fast track being a leader, and you got to stop and go, you know what? You know where we start? We start with service. You start with taking care of people because the reality is you need time to develop. And what I see happen a lot of times in young generations like you guys is this. You get to college and something happens. You start to realize you have legitimate talent, legitimate giftings, and you have some passion and drive. And so you take that and go, I think I have some gifting as this. I have a passion for this. Put me in charge. And you want to skip like every step in between. And it's like, no. It's not time yet. Like, I can dribble a ball. Put me in the NBA. Whoa. There's a couple levels, all right? And you got to wait. But I'll meet guys like that all the time. They'll get a little bit of gifting and they'll want to take over the world. And you go, hold on. Jesus said, he who is faithful with little becomes faithful with much. So they go, how do I get in? How do I break in? How do I serve? You know how you do it? You do it now for free. You just start serving kids. You volunteer at your church and do whatever they ask you to do. You just become a servant to your friends. How do you get to lead an organization? Serve them. Serve them. And then as you do that, you rise up. And he who's faithful with little is faithful with much. And you need that time to develop. I was thinking about it with this week with Harry Potter is coming out, you know? I imagine you're all aware of that, right? What is this, movie number 9 or something like that? I don't care. All right, something like that. Let me ask you this. Did little Harry have the raw materials to kill Voldemort at the very beginning? Some would say, yeah, absolutely. So the question is, why do we have 7, 8, or 9 movies? Why do we have to wait this long for him to kill that guy, right? Well, go back and watch the first movie. Have you ever seen it? He's like 10, all right? He's eating little gummy bears like, you're like, okay, you're not ready to take on the forces of darkness at that level. You need a good 7, 8, 9 movies for what? To develop, to mature, to grow. The raw material was there. You were the chosen one back then at 10, but you weren't ready. You need to grow and mature and move on. Let me give you a more biblical example. Joshua. When we meet Joshua in the Old Testament, who is he? He's a spy. He's part of the army, and they say, hey, we want you to spy out the promised land. And what does he do? He does an excellent job. He does it well, and when they ask him his opinion is full of faith. He's a guy who trusts God and is doing his little job well. Next time you see him, he's a commander in the army. What do you see him doing as a commander? You see him doing his job well, and you see he is a man of fervent prayer. Then you see him as the assistant of Moses. And what's he doing? He's holding up his arms, supporting the lead guy, being there for him. And you see he's a guy who's serving well and is a man of faith. And then he becomes leader of God's people. But he moves, and at each step he says, I'm going to serve, I'm going to care, I'm going to bless. And all they do is they give him a title that reflects what he's already doing. And that's who you're meant to be. That's who you're meant to be. So don't see any job as too small. I really want to encourage you with that. We are all, if you're a Christian in here, you're meant to jump in. And where I want you to jump in is wherever you see a need and wherever you have the slightest inclination to serve. And you serve there and do the best. And we watch you. And as we watch you, we will see, does this person labor hard? Is this person taking care of us? Is this person admonishing us? Are they serving and it's bearing fruit? Then you rise up and you can lead us. And so I got to tell you something. For Breakaway, this is behind the curtain information, I'll tell you anyway. When someone asks to lead, that's a pretty sure guarantee they won't. And when we were looking for worship leaders, I got so many people asking me to get on this stage. And if they asked me, the answer was no, ever. Because I knew they weren't desperate to love you guys. They were desperate to get this light on them. And I'm not interested in that guy. And I got to tell you, with our student leaders who are here putting this on, most of you don't know their faces. You don't know their names. But we picked them because we would watch them serve, and we would put them in little jobs, and they would do it well, passionately, joyfully, serving, caring for you, and we would just keep an eye on them. And then slowly over time, we would saddle up next to them and say, hey, I want you to run this deal. Then we make them fill out an application and all that too. But they don't ask for one. And we don't do open tryouts either. We watch you. We look at you. And when we see these characteristics that you're kind of doing it anyway, then we just give you the t-shirt, right? That's the idea. And that's how the Christian church works. Do you see that? So that's who becomes leaders. And I just think that's brilliant. He says, Thessalonians, start watching each other. And the people who are already doing the work, begin to honor them. And so that's how you serve. But can I tell you this? In our community now, we have elders. If you go to a church, you have pastors, you have leaders in your church, and there's different names and different structures of leaders. But in this town, at every church and in several organizations, you have small group leaders and Sunday school teachers and worship leaders and pastors. And these are people who, Lord willing, people have watched them and seen proven service, and they've raised them up to the top. And I got to tell you something. When you see those people, I want to encourage you. One, proven service will let you rise. But then number two, as you go into Christian organizations where someone else is running the show, someone else's director, someone else's pastor, someone else's lead worship leader, someone else's Bible study teacher, when you walk into that room, do you know what your job is? Honor them. And he says, esteem them highly in love, which just flies in the face of Americans, you know? We just hate honoring authority. Have you noticed that about us? We hate it. I had a friend recently come back from China, and it was the most interesting thing. He said, Ben, I was in China. He said, and they speak Chinese, and they all speak Mandarin. And he says, originally, all their different provinces had different dialects. He says, but then they all stopped their remote dialects and moved to Mandarin. And when I asked them why, they said, because the government told us to. He said, and my next question was, what would they do to you if you refused to do it? And he said, the guy I asked was confused by the question. He was like, I don't know. And my friend was like, well, then why'd you do it? And he goes, because they asked us to. So are you telling me you did what they said for you to do just because they asked you? No punishment, no threat? Yeah. And he was like, wow, weird. And he said, Ben, it was funny for me as an American. He said, I really saw, and I'm not, advocating we should all be communists or something. There's some real downsides to how China's running things. But on his side, he goes, Ben, it was just interesting to me as an American to see me. He was like, if someone tells me what to do, I instantly don't want to do it. Hey, can you change dialects? No, and I'll burn this mother down. You don't tell me what to do. He said that just rose up in me, like, you don't tell me how to speak in a certain dialect. All right, he wanted to attack. And we all do that. As soon as someone becomes president, we're like, yay, he's president. I'm going to knock him off that pedestal. All right, and we just come after him. And we do that with organizational leaders. The minute they make a mistake, we're all over them, right? And we do it with pastors. You ask people why they don't give to their church, and what a lot of people say, well, I'm not sure what they're doing with the money behind doors. And all. We question their integrity, and you're like, if you don't think they're handling your money well, why are you going to church there? And so if they are, give them your money. But there's some about us that we're like, I think you're doing a good job. I'll keep listening, but you don't get my money because I get my eye on you. All right, and there's distrust. And he says, here's the deal. When someone rises up and they're a leader in the Christian community, you notice that they're working hard for you, they're caring for you and admonishing you, they're making us better people. When you see them, don't withhold encouragement. There's this arrogant insecurity in us that we can't do it. And I want you to break through that, and I want you to bless people. I want you to take care of them. I want you to compliment them. And I know some of you go to church and you listen to your pastor and you go, he's not as good as the guy at podcast. Let me tell you something. Most aren't, all right? If you're that kid that's doing that, congratulations. On podcast, you can listen to the 2-3 top preachers in the planet. He's probably better than the guy you're listening to at the moment. Get over it, all right? That's not grounds to dishonor your pastor or a worship leader or small group leader or whoever. And thinking you can do a better job isn't grounds to do it either. There's a lot of us that sit back and we just go, I could have said that better. I could have said that funnier. I could have said that more powerful. Me. All right. And it's just kind of like this arrogance. And you don't encourage that guy. You don't encourage him. And I'll tell you something. You know why I know this about you? It's because I was that guy. All right? And I didn't know that until I started leading something. When I became a youth pastor right out of college, I remember I hired my first hire. And I remember I wasn't doing it for his encouragement. I would have quit long before that. And I wasn't doing it for my students. But I remember if anyone in my organization would tell me I did a good job, or tell me I was leading well, or tell me I made a good decision, or do what I said and not be really angry that I said it, I was just so encouraged by that. I was so blessed by that. I could run for miles on that fuel, you know? And then I remember as I realized that, I thought about, and I have never done that from my boss. And I realized when I sit around staff meetings, I'm that guy hunched down in the chair. Been the way you do this? Yeah, it's whatever, dude. It's fine. And I realized I am what I hate. I'm the guy I don't like. I'm a monster. I was like, in that category, I'm not the guy I want to have on my team. And that changed me. I remember now, from now on, when my pastor does something well, I want to encourage him. I want to bless him. I want to build him up. I want to do what Paul's telling me to do. I want to shoot love into the system. And I want to encourage you. This isn't some backhanded way for you to encourage me. I'm not asking for encouragement. I'm not like, and so if they're admonishing you on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock, you just love them. All right, that's not that. You know what the takeaway is from this point for you guys, if I can encourage you? I want you to write a thank you note to your pastor. I want you to tell your Bible study leader thanks. I want you to walk down front at the next service where they preach the gospel and it helps you and shake their hand and say thank you. I just want you to bless the people who are leading, all right? It's interesting. He moves on and he says, be at peace among yourselves. And commentators go all over the place with, why does he throw that in there? It's random. And they call this section like assorted encouragements. And you're like, no, it's not assorted. Why does he say be at peace among yourselves? Because where there's no leadership, there's no peace. And where there's no gratitude, there's no peace. We need both. We need leaders, and then we need to be encouragers. One of the greatest tragedies in church history is Clement's first letter to the Corinthians, because it comes right after Paul's letters to the Corinthians, where Paul begged them to get along. And Clement says, you know what happened? He says the young ones got fed up with the older ones, and there's a church split. And what Clement says is, he says, the worthless have risen up against the honored, those of no reputation against those who are renowned, the foolish against the wise, the young against the advanced in years, and for this reason, righteousness and peace have departed from you. He says, there used to be peace, and now there's not anymore. And you want to know why? It's because the people refuse to honor and esteem and love those who God put above them as leaders. And I don't want that for your church. I don't want that for your small group. I don't want that for your organization. So we take care of them. Does that make sense? Last part, we'll go quite a bit quicker. And it's this. Paul does something interesting here, and I love it. The picture is of this little community journeying on into forever. And you know the mental picture I got as I looked at this? He's telling us, I want you to honor the people who are the front runners. And then in the second section, it's like he turns and says, and then there's some people who aren't front runners. And he's going to tell us how to deal with them. And the picture in my mind, the whole time I was studying this, was Oregon Trail. I don't know if you ever played that game, but you know, it's like wagons going west, you know, like you load up your family in the wagon, Little House on the Prairie style, and you go off to a new world, all right, and you ride out there. And I love it because it's interesting. The way he's presenting the church is this. We're riding out there and you're calling the shots, but there's some in your community that are weak, right? Little Sally got bit by a snake, all right? She's got the fever, Pa, you know, that kind of thing. And in that moment, you have to make a decision. Do I just keep riding and let Sally die? Or do we get, that's cold-blooded. You probably killed all the bison too. Or do you give them rest? Do you give them medicine? What do we do? And what's interesting about this is he's going to say, hey, there's some people who are front runners, who are leading, and we need to honor them. And then there's some people who are kind of sick and kind of beat up and kind of need some help. And he's going to tell us how to deal with them. And what you see about the Christian church is we are not this slick, fast-moving special forces group, right? You know, where everybody's gunned up and ripped and ready to run. Okay, we are not a jet, all right, that just screams through the air. We are a covered wagon with sick people in the back. And we're like, oh, we got to pull over, you know. And And not all of us are front runners. And so he says, we got to honor the people who are leading us. And then those people that aren't, we got to help them. So we honor those who serve and we help those who struggle. That's this passage. And real quickly, those who struggle, he says a couple things. He says, admonish the idle. That word idle, frankly, means slacker. Either financially, spiritually, they're disorganized. They're the people who aren't contributing, all right? They're lazy. And what's interesting about it, in 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians, laziness is directly tied to chaos and disorder in the community. He says the idle people are the people who are causing chaos in the community. And so he says those who aren't serving, aren't contributing, aren't doing anything but have the capacity to. They're idle. They're causing chaos in the community. And some of you are maybe aren't serving, aren't doing anything, aren't helping any Christians anywhere, not giving, not serving. And you go, well, I'm not causing disorder. I'm not causing chaos. I'm not doing anything. Right. That's the problem. You're not doing anything. And so you're one of two things if you've chosen to do nothing to help us. You're a drain on our resources, or you give us a bad reputation in the world. Because the world's hurting and our gospel says that we care deeply for the hurting. And if you send out a message contrary, you hurt us. And so he says there's a group among you that they have the capacity to serve and they're just not. They've decided to pursue comfort. They've decided to mooch off of you. They've decided they don't really care about the purposes of Jesus. And he says those people I want you to admonish. Admonish, quite frankly, just means lovingly kick them in the butt. That's basically what that is. So there's a constituency that you just need to lovingly say, get in the game, chief. There's another group, though. It says encourage the faint-hearted. And here's the deal, that you've got to nuance this. There's some people that aren't serving and aren't helping because they're just slackers. And you got to say, what's the matter with you? Get in there. Come on. And move them on. But then there's other people that aren't really serving us, aren't really helping us. And it's because they're faint-hearted. And the last thing you want to do to them is guilt trip them about not serving. You don't want to move towards the struggling and go, what's the matter with you? Get in the game and serve. I don't care if your mom died. Get in there. All right, no. That's bad. And churches do that kind of stuff. He says there's some people that are faint-hearted. And you go, what does that mean? It means people that are maybe afraid, people that are discouraged. Maybe they feel inadequate. They go, I can't hang with you guys. I'm JV. You're all varsity. They feel discouraged. They feel a lack of confidence. And he says, to those people I want you to encourage. There's some you need to say, you can do this, get in there. There's others you got to say, you know what, you can do this. And you breathe courage into them. You don't get mad at them. You don't jump on them. You don't slap them around and go, you should serve around here. Why are these Christians idle and write some book about how they're not really saved? Easy. You got to encourage the faint-hearted, not just leave them on the side of the road. And then he says, help the weak. That word help is the idea of you hold them up. And there's some people among us that are weak. And that could mean they're financially, they're hurting. It could mean spiritually, they're dealing with some temptation. It can mean physically, those who are ill. And I got to tell you something. If you start serving in a church, you figure out pretty quick. There's people that are front runners and are leading. And there's some people that need help. And he says there's some weak people among you and you need to help them. You don't need to cast them aside. You need to work with them. And here's the reality. At some point in all of our lives, we'll be this person. Some category will come up where you're not strong. Some area of temptation that doesn't tempt those seven, but it sure gets you. And you're going to have to say, you know what? I'm not the leader in this moment. I'm the weak one in this moment. I need your help. Or maybe you say, you know what? I've dealt with a tragedy in my life right now, and I know the whole train's moving this way, but I need some comfort right now. I don't need a list of to-dos. And that's okay. We're not going to kick you out of the van if you're not pushing the ball forward. And some of you, we go, you know what? You need some help right now, and we're going to be there for you. And he says, be patient with all. Be patient with all. Which I think is good because it's just so practical. You know, heaven will be a place, the eternal state will be where we all get along joyfully and we're all happy. But the reality is now as Christians, we have the love of God in our hearts. We're a family, but sometimes we're just going to have to be patient with each other because we get on each other's nerves. Isn't that great? I mean, it's sad because you're like, oh, it's true, you know? And you've all been there. You've been in a small group with that guy who keeps saying stuff that you're like, wow. I mean, just on so many levels, wow. All right? And Or maybe in a group like this, there's just so many people that you're like, I just can't even, they said it again. No. All right. And there's people, and he says, you know what? You got to be patient. And I remember for me, the first time I worked on a church staff, there were some people that were kind of charismatic off the dangerous, crazy end. And there were some people who were really conservative, kind of older end. And there were some people who were just clueless on the Bible, like didn't know a thing end. I remember one of them saying, didn't Jesus turn wine into fish? And I was like, wow. And I remember going, man, and I was just like, Lord, why did you put me in the crazy house? And then I realized, no, we got to be patient with each other. And then you know what I realized? I realized my problem was I was the judgmental one. I didn't see myself, but I was the guy going, you're crazy, and you're the... And then suddenly when I realized that, I was like, they're all having to be patient with me. No, I'm a monster. And I realized, no, we got to all be patient with each other. And then really he closes by saying all of this, you know what this is? It's a working out of the golden rule. No one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to everyone. People are going to hurt your feelings. People are going to hurt you. And he says, you know what? You don't repay evil for evil. You don't hurt them back. And actually, it's not just you refrain from doing evil to them. You actually do good to them. You bless them. And then he makes sure, not just among Christians, you do that with everybody, the whole world. And he says that's basically what we do. So when they're leaders, we encourage them when they're leading. When they're hurting, we encourage them when they're hurting. And when they hurt us or run over us, we bless. We bless them. And honestly, what he's asking us to do there is really hard. It's really hard. And you say, how do I do that? I mean, if you really think about that, if someone hurts your feelings in an organization, you don't talk bad about them. You don't rip on them. You bless them. You only speak well of them. When they talk bad about you to other people, you don't talk bad about them. When they do something to you, directly to you, that hurts, you bless them back. I mean, that's pretty powerful language. Never repay evil for evil. Always do good to them instead. Love your enemy. I mean, that's pretty serious. And so here, if you just, to wrap up, he says, I want you to bless everyone, help everyone, be patient with everyone, love even your enemies, the end. If we're really going to take this seriously, we have to go, that's really hard. How do I pull that off? Well, the only way you do is where this text started. He says, remember those who care for us in the Lord. The only way we're going to do this is because we are in the Lord. We have a Lord Jesus who was patient with us. We have a Lord Jesus who didn't repay evil for evil. Aren't you glad about that? I mean, aren't you just thrilled Jesus wasn't like Eminem or Justin Timberlake? I mean, just listen to their music. Listen to an Eminem song the other day. It's a little too late for you to say sorry now. I mean, can you imagine? Jesus is crucified and then rises from the grave and like, it's a little too late. All right, and just won't help you. Cry me a river while he's floating up, you know. How weird would that be? Didn't mean for that to be so disturbing. Let me ask you something. Let me say something. He's our guide. He's our guide. That's our guy. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When they nailed him to a piece of wood, he said, Father, forgive them. Why? Because he entrusted his soul to him who judges justly. God will give me justice, and God will use me as a conduit of grace. And so I will be an instrument of peace in this world. And so he died praying for the forgiveness of those who murdered him. And when he rose, he is patient and kind and gentle with us. And if you're a Christian, you're one of his kids. And he will give you the resources to bless those who lead you. He will give you the resources to be kind to those who are difficult. He will give you the resources to love your enemy. That's what he did. And when we realize I was his enemy and he died for me to forgive me and save me, then when someone's mean to you, you have resources to be kind. When someone's leading you, you have the resources to bless them fully. And when someone's hurting, you have the resources to come to their aid because our King has done so for us. Let me pray for us. Well, Father, there's a lot of organizations with great goals and And that's awesome. And there's many people in here who are part of great organizations, but I just want to thank you that the church is the greatest of organizations. That we have a goal that is eternal, that will never fade, that what we're chasing is a glorious future that goes on forever. That we're seeking to know God and make him known, crying out to a dark and hurting world that God can rescue. And Father, I just want to pray, as we do that as a community, we have a great cause in front of us. Now, Father, would you give us a culture that reflects your heart? And I pray for some of us tonight, we need to go and we need to call the leader of our Christian organization. We need to call our small group leader. We need to call somebody who's been serving us and caring for us, and we just need to tell them thank you. Some of us have some emails to write tonight, some thank you notes. And I just pray, Lord, you would break down our pride and you'd give us courage to esteem highly and love those who have cared for us. And then, Father, as we look around, may we not smugly turn our faces away from those who are hurting. But I pray, Lord, you'd build a Christian community that's not just the pretty, happy people, but also has a place for the hurting as well. And God, I pray as people look down at A&M, they would see a culture that's honest about our weaknesses, but confident about our cause. And we have a culture that reflects our King. And I pray we'd love deeply and help truly. And Lord, that we would chase this cause of seeing people come to know you in a manner that honors you. May that be true, God, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here on a lovely Wednesday morning in College Station, Texas.
Indeed.
The sun is shining, and it is awesome. And I'm sitting here with Ben Stewart. My name is Jeremy, and I'm also here with Todd Davidson, who helps us record our podcast.
Yes, he does.
Way to go, Todd.
Very helpful.
Very helpful. I mean, just the best. I bet people really appreciate what you do, Todd.
They should.
Because they can hear it loud and clear.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a good night last night, and just was kind of starting to wrap up this semester.
Yeah.
And the book of First Thessalonians. You started a kind of a part one of two kind of talks here at the end of the semester, Living in Community Part 1.
Right.
And I actually talked to a few people who drove over from Austin to be there last night that go to UT.
Really?
Yeah, and they were a group of leaders, like from their organization, their ministry there, and they were just like, we felt like this talk was for us. It was so great, and
That's cool.
So I love how that happens.
Yeah.
But how'd you feel about it? You enjoyed the talk?
I did. It was one of those. There were a lot of issues to think through. The text was more complicated than I thought it would be, and so in my personal time, I spent a lot more time making sure I understood the text than I did thinking how I'm going to present it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so while I was talking through it, there was a couple times in my mind, I'm like, I hope that just made sense.
Yeah.
I think it's clear in my mind. Is everyone clear on that? So, whenever it feels like that for me, I'm always like, I hope I didn't say anything stupid. Like, I don't know.
Well, we normally get emails if it's not clear.
That's true.
People will let us know.
We'll see. So, if I said anything half-cocked or that hurt anyone's feelings, sorry about that. Mm-hmm. Unless it was in a good way hurt your feelings, like if you're a slacker and I needed to admonish you.
Right. That could have happened.
It could have.
We got a lot of college students in a building last night.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing with a talk like that is you always worry that the wrong people will hear the wrong message. Mm-hmm. Some of them are working so hard and are really given the space they're in life and the commitments they're in. They're doing everything right. And yet they'll hear that and be like, I'm a slacker. And you're like, no, that's not you. Mm-hmm. And then there's that. So you just pray, Lord, help people hear the right part. And the truth is all of us are often a mix of those things. And in any given moment, you're one of them, Today I was really helping lead, and yesterday I was really in need of help, and on it goes. But.
Well, for your talk, I mean, I know there's probably some things that you would like to add to as well as maybe even just encourage people with as you were studying through the text and some things that jumped out at you that you were like, hey, I'm going to share that on the podcast because we don't have a lot of time on Tuesday nights. So,
well, I tell you, I spent a lot of time. Again, it kind of surprised me how much time it spent working through some of the language Paul uses, because it is a little vague. Who is he talking? Is he talking to their leaders? Why didn't he just come out and say it? And I feel strongly that the way I presented it is what was happening, given, and so I feel comfortable about that. But there were a couple times in the talk I did something I try not to do, and that is say, well, this word, we translated it this way. I would actually say it that way. The truth is, truly, our English translations are amazing. And, when I was in seminary, we had to translate several books of the Bible from Greek into English. And so I have the Ben Stewart version of Philippians and Ephesians and Romans, and I wouldn't give those out to anybody. You know what I mean? Like, it was really interesting to just have the Greek in front of me and really work on it and really come up with the best translation, and then read like the ESV and go, oh, geez, theirs is better. So I don't like to be critical of English translations. But in this passage, there were some areas where I understand why they use the word respect. They were pulling that up from the word esteem. And it's right. And to say, know those among you, people would go, I don't know what that means. But that's where sometimes translators understand that. I can't bring out every nuance here. I'm trusting that exegetes and preachers will. So I'm not mad at them for that, but I felt like I needed to do that there. And I would just say, for people who are going, well, okay, what do I do if I don't know Greek? How do I study well? Mm-hmm. I think the best thing you do, if I could just say real briefly, a good way to study is...
Everybody's getting out their notes right now.
Get out your...
Okay, best way to study. Here we go.
is get, if you're going to study a text, get a good word-for-word translation commentary. Or translation, like the ESV or the New American Standard, or the even the New King James would be maybe third choice. Those three, tried to do a word for word translation as best you can from Greek and English, and I would pick one of those and make that your central translation to work from. But then anytime you're studying a text, I would read a couple other ones. So I'm working primarily out of the ESV now, but I always read the New American Standard and the NIV along with it. And I do that because what happens is, if you don't know Greek, you read those, and usually you'll see they're pretty lockstep in language. But every now and again, you'll see them kind of go different ways in how they say something. And you're like, okay, when I see that, then that means there was probably some nuance or something that was hard to bring across. And so these groups of men and women that were translating were struggling to find the right English words. And at that point, I think you go and find a good commentary. I'm shocked at how amazing the ESV Study Bible is. If you're not going to go out and accumulate a bunch of commentaries, if you just bought that big study Bible, it's got some great notes in there. But then beyond that, personally for me, then I go to commentaries, good exegetical ones. And we put a list on our website of ones I'll use. Because when I decide I'm really going to study this book of the Bible, I just buy the best commentary I can, or the best 2 or 3 I can, and work from those and kind of let their voices come in as well. So I would encourage people to do that. There's more we could say, but I'll just leave it there to say that's how you can do it. But
cool.
But I worked through like 3 different commentaries on this issue, and people really went different directions in how they understood that second word, who's over you or cares for you. But that word is pretty dynamically translated in different texts. Like it's pretty clear in other places. Paul's talking about someone who financially supports you, not necessarily someone who tells you what to do. And then in one text, it's even translated promotion, to promote good works. And you're like, oh, okay. So the word has a range, which all English words do too. You say the word dog, those 3 letters, D-O-G, dog, those characters, it could be a 4-legged animal. It could be a slang word you use to reference a friend. You know what I mean? Like, our words have range too. So anyway, maybe I'll just stop there.
Yeah. And on that note,
There it is. So hope that helps a little bit. But I'll say, maybe I want to say one other thing about the talk. And that is, like I said, Paul ends with the golden rule is what we call it. Jesus said it. It's all through the Bible. Do unto others as you'd have them do to you. That concept is there. Don't do evil back to evil, but do good to those who are even evil. It's a version of that. But anytime you preach that, you have to be careful with some people, because it says don't repay evil for evil, but do good to everyone. People go, well, how does that relate in issues of justice? And so one I specifically want to address and was on my heart is, what about the girl who's been raped? There's people who say, well, I want vengeance. I want to punish that person. I want to see them destroyed or hurt. And that's wrong. That's not the right motivation to do anything, from try to get them arrested to send someone to go hurt them. But then on the flip side, some people go, oh, I'm supposed to do good to them, so I'm just going to let them go or not do anything, or, something. And that's not right either, because that's actually not the most loving thing to do. Because if this person's out there doing violence to other women, the most loving thing to do for them is to stop them and let them reevaluate that life choice. And then the most loving thing to do to other women or other men or children or whoever is to get that person restrained. So the pursuit of loving someone and the pursuit of justice are not at odds. And so I would say, if you're in that situation where someone has hurt you, love doesn't mean continue to place yourself in that dangerous or violent environment. That's not love. And love may mean calling the police. Love may mean reporting them. And at a government level, people who run countries, love even looks like military action sometimes, those are very difficult decisions to make. But and most of us aren't in those positions. But what I'm trying to say is, love and justice aren't at odds. And so some of you, the most loving thing you'll do is report somebody who's perpetrated a crime. And you do it to help the community. And then we go visit them in prison and share the gospel with them, honestly. You go do like the Amish did when that guy broke in and shot a bunch of their kids. You put that guy in prison, but then they ministered to his family and brought them food. And I mean, just over the top love, but that didn't mean you let the guy go.
Right.
So anyway, I just wanted to make that distinction, because some people who are afraid to go and do the right thing will use that as a reason, and I don't want them to. Anyway.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to the part 2 next couple weeks from now.
Me too.
So, well, we've got a break. Next week will be Thanksgiving break, so we will also break that Tuesday night, and we won't be doing breakaway like we normally do. And so we'll encourage everybody to go enjoy their Thanksgiving with family and friends, and then we'll be back on the 30th. Right. So we'll be in Reed Arena, so we look forward to being with people then. And actually, over the Thanksgiving break, our good friend and worship leader, Jeff Johnson, is getting married.
That's right.
So we're pretty excited for him and Jordan, and people all over, Aggies all over the world are whooping, and it's just going to be so exciting.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so his next time at Breakaway will be as a married man.
Whoop.
So it's interesting. There's only one more podcast from the fall. I mean, we'll do one more talk. I don't know. Maybe we'll do more than one podcast. I don't know. We haven't talked about that, actually. But there's only one more sermon, I guess, until like mid-January.
I know.
It's weird. But we do. We're not disappearing because we have a CD coming out. We showed a promo video for our CD last night, and I was really encouraged by how excited students got. Did you hear them? I mean, they were freaking out. And we're letting them pre-order, and they were getting excited about it, and it's off to the races. So anyway, I got to tell y'all, just listening to the the
finish.
songs again. Golly, it's going to be amazing. So,
We're excited about it. Can't
Yeah,
wait.
man.
It'll be out in the world on iTunes and everywhere else on the 7th of December.
yeah.
So we'll be talking more about it here, getting people excited about it, but
Yeah.
can't wait. It's been a lot of work and just some great leadership from our different friends and worship leaders, and they just really write such great songs that students here on the campus of A&M can wrap around and sing, and so we can't wait to share that with people, you know.
Totally. And I just love that, you know, you, Jeremy, and others worked so hard to get this thing out before Christmas, you know, before the break. So people could buy them as Christmas presents if they want, and that would be great. But then also when our students leave for a month
Yeah.
and we're not really generating new podcasts, they're taking this music with them and songs with them and kind of that. I just love that we're kind of filling in that space with a tool that can encourage them as they're driving home and driving along and anybody else too. So I just love the timing of it too.
Yeah.
So
We'll be unveiling a few videos too, just to kind of show people visually what happens on Tuesday night with the worship and the music and stuff. So that'll be cool, and we'll be throwing that up on our website soon and let everybody know. So be you know, tracking with us. Stay tuned. So well, cool. Well, we're gonna wrap up and just look forward to seeing everybody at Breakaway in 2 weeks. But enjoy your Thanksgiving break, and God bless.
see you.